What is happening, Mr. Mark Bare Naked Willie? Good to see you today, my friend.
I had the mute button on, Dave. So happy BS Friday Live, brother.
Yeah, happy BS Friday Live to you as well. Sorry if you're hearing the planes come over. I am in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is one busy airport of a place.
Hotlanta. And what's the temperature in Hotlanta today?
Man, it's actually nice. It's nice. It was when I got here, it was like in mid 70s, low 80s, I think is where it's at probably today. I've actually been inside the air conditioning here having a few meetings. So
Well,
you know how it goes.
I'm glad you had a safe trip into Atlanta. I don't know how many flat tires you got on your bicycle on the way over, but glad you're there safe. We got a great show, Dave. We
always have a great show, Mark. I mean, every time we think we're going to do better on this show, we do better. I mean, it's one of those things or every time you don't think you can do better, we do better, right? It's one of those things where, you just always got to go with the flow with things. We always have these great guests on and we learn so much and we are sharing that knowledge. And I think, bringing awareness to the industry and to those who are not in our industry, Mark, is what we love to do. And I think sharing is caring, and that's what we're going to do again today.
It was great. It was a great setup. Dave, where can people hit the like button?
Oh, you can hit the like button on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and what am I missing, Mark? LinkedIn Live. So join us.
LinkedIn.
That's right. And if you're not following us on YouTube, you need to go follow us because every one of these shows that Mark and I have done over the last 2 years, that's right, 2 years, they are all on LinkedIn under the BS Friday tab. And if they're not there, they will
YouTube.
be.
YouTube, Dave.
Oh,
they're
am
on
I saying
YouTube.
LinkedIn? YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. YouTube. I'm all a mess today. But yeah, go on our YouTube channel and subscribe because you can watch these either live or you can watch them pre-recorded. So that's the best part about it.
So the joy of going live is Dave shows up places, I show up places, and we coordinate virtually, right? And and we got a message this morning that that Hugh, our good friend Hugh, had taken ill, and so wasn't able to present tonight. So we have one of his esteemed coworkers joining us. That's right. We're thrilled that Partel was able to make those adjustments, and we wish for a speedy recovery to our buddy Hugh.
We definitely do. Hugh, so speedy recovery to you. I think though, it's one of those things, Mark, you never know what you're going to get, but I think we got a real winner of a showmanship here that actually knows the stuff, knows the presentation. And from what I understand in our brief conversation, this can be a good show.
Yeah. So let's bring on the more handsome of the Partel crew, and happy BS Friday to everyone.
Oh, look who we have. Dara, welcome to the show. Good to see you, my good friend.
Hi, guys. How are you? How's everybody?
Wonderful. Thanks for jumping in.
No problem.
Dara, we're thrilled to have you today. The background alone takes my breath away. So thank you for joining BS Friday Live.
No problem. Thanks very much for having me. Hugh sends his apologies. I guess, like you said, Mark, you got the younger, better looking version. So it's an upgrade in my book, but let's see. It's big shoes to fill from a technical point of view, but I hope I'll be able to do us justice.
Oh, Lord, it's hard to be humble, right? It's beautiful.
It is hard to be humble. Dara, why don't you take 2 minutes? We want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Don't leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital. Or Mark Wille's mom, Diane, will call you, Dara, and we want to know where you're joining from today, and we want to know if you actually had a beer yet, because it's late, isn't it?
It's just coming up on 6 p.m. here, so no beer just yet. But I mentioned to Mark just before we joined, it's a bank holiday, a long weekend here, so plenty of beers tomorrow and Sunday, hopefully. So I'm joining you from the west of Ireland, from Galway here in the west of Ireland, which is where Partel is based originally. It was founded here a decade ago. I guess my background will be in sustainable building design of lots of different types. Again, myself and Mark had a quick chat before we joined, and we know some similar guys. We've worked in similar kind of industries, I suppose, in the past. So at the moment, I'm actually the director of Partel UK. So I focus primarily on the UK market, but do lots in the Irish market. We work lots in North America, of course, and in Europe too. So I guess in terms of my own background, I actually started out as a high school construction teacher. So that was my I guess, original calling. Kind of got, I guess, stressed with kids and stuff like that with the students. So I ended up going into design and training. So I guess I've been in that space ever since.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, the art of teaching transcends beyond schools, right? We have it in the workplace, and you jumping over to London and you jumping back to Scotland and whatnot. I'm sure teaching's a big part of that. So it's great to have that background that you have in the industry that needs it.
There are a lot of it.
I guess it's a communication thing, really, isn't it? It's great for us to know the knowledge and have the knowledge here in Partel, but to be able to explain that to designers or homeowners, or sometimes you're dealing with people that have no background in the industry, so you have to make very technical knowledge easy to understand. So it's definitely stood to me in my current role. I still get the itch to teach, and I still do that. We support lots of different training organizations, which we might discuss later on, and I'm lucky enough to guest lecture in technical universities here in Ireland as well. So I still scratch that itch from time to time.
So what is it? Why don't you tell us exactly what your role at Partel is? Why don't you set us up with what your role is, and then let's get into this, man, because even though you're not a teacher anymore, I have a feeling you do a lot of teaching.
Yeah, so basically, I guess my role in Partel is a technical one. So I guess we supply products. So essentially, we sell airtight membranes and tapes. We design them, manufacture them, and so on. So ultimately, we're supplying those to different stakeholders. But I guess my particular role is to give technical knowledge in terms of how the membranes work, where they should be fit, where they should be specified, the practicalities of how they're installed, training where that's necessary. So I guess it's business development through a technical perspective, if that makes sense. There's lots of U values and WFI calculations and technical paperwork that goes into getting all of these things specified on a project. And I guess that's what I specialize in.
You're muted, brother.
Sorry, the planes were going over. You said a WFI calculation?
Yeah, it's actually something I guess I'd like to discuss a little bit later on. So
okay,
WFI is basically we'll jump into it now while it's come up. It's essentially a dynamic modeling tool which is used to assess risk of interstitial condensation and mold. So as I know from all your previous content, you're all well versed on vapor control and air tightness and so on, which is exactly what our membranes do. They can be breathable, non-breathable. I guess there's lots of different types of membranes, but when they're installed in a building fabric, whether it be the wall or the roof, that impacts how vapor can move and where interstitial condensation might occur. So WFI basically helps us look at that in a very specific way to, I guess, assess the risk of mold and condensation. So that would be something I do to help support customers.
Sure.
WFI is spelled WUFI if anyone is on the Google machine. And
absolutely.
The next word you're going to look up is interstitial. And if you don't know what a U value is, then you're going to enjoy today's presentation, because our values, effective R values, in the mad world of vapor is knocking at your door, whether you notice or not.
And in between your walls.
Everywhere. So this is good. I'm glad we got WFI on the table. Absolutely happy Friday to you, Buzz, and Michael Bruce from Jamaica. So there we go. We have an Islander here today.
That's it.
Dara, would you like to maybe start with a slide and get us in the technical world so people can focus?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm going to share my screen, I guess, just to show, it helps show how the product is used and where it's applied and so on. But I'll try and breeze through it. I know it's a kind of a quick introduction today. I feel free to stop me at any point to get a little bit more technical. So I'll keep it pretty high level, but I'm happy to go into as much or as little detail as you guys want.
That's a thumbs up.
So I'll share my screen real quick. Just bear with me.
We get real small. We get real small. There we go.
Now, hopefully everybody can see that.
It's great.
So the product that we're going to discuss today, like I said, we have a really huge range, so we wouldn't have time to cover everything today, but we're going to focus specifically on Exoperm Mono SA, which is this black membrane you can see here. So this is ultimately a peel and stick breathable membrane. I guess the first thing to address is it's a monolithic breather membrane. So basically what that means is it's a really high performance external membrane. There's no physical holes in this membrane that make it breathable. So some other products, for example, have tiny little holes that allow vapor to pass through it, which make it breathable. This particular membrane doesn't actually have that. So it has a layer in the middle of the membrane, which is called the monolithic layer, and that allows vapor to move through diffusion. Now, what that means is because there's no physical holes in the membrane, they're less likely to get blocked up, and therefore durability is much better on a product like this than on a non-monolithic breather membrane, for example.
So if we could take one step back, right?
Yeah, no problem.
Everyone
I'm jumping in
knows
at the
right
deep end
there-
here, Mark.
Yeah. So everyone knows right there we're looking at a wall,
Mhm.
but they might not understand that this is a component of a rain screen, and they might not actually understand what a membrane is or why. So you explain the difference of this one being monolithic. Can you
Yep.
take that to more of the layman's approach for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, I guess to take a few steps back, and thanks for pulling me up on it. I do tend to get straight into the weeds a little bit too quickly. So if we look at
Half
this
the
detail
audience
here,
wants you to more in the weeds, and the other audience says, "What's a weed?"
we'll try and strike the
I'm a
balance.
what a weed guy.
So basically, looking at this detail here, for example, it's obviously a wall buildup. So we have insulation between our studs, for example, and let's say we have an OSB board on the outside of those studs, right? Now, what we want to do is we need to install a membrane that can effectively protect the building from weather. So that would be the likes of wind, rain, and UV. So there are three factors that can negatively impact the building performance if we don't protect against them. So in this system, it is a rain screen system. We install the Exoperm mono on the outside of the OSB board. Now, the fact that it's a peel and stick, what that means is the membrane, literally there's a backing paper on it, it's covered in adhesive, and we stick it right onto the OSB. So every inch of this black membrane is actually stuck down to the OSB board. But like I said, importantly, the roles that plays, it keeps the rain out, it keeps the wind out, which can negatively impact your insulation performance. And it also is UV stable, so it doesn't degrade very quickly when exposed to the sun.
And the reason all those aspects are there is because the cladding next to it will certainly allow for the sun, the UV properties to penetrate. And
Absolutely.
also when it's installed, there's a delay period to add the furring strips and whatnot. So you want a UV stable product.
Yeah.
And that air barrier is because the OSB and the joints of the OSB are not an air barrier.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
so Mark, so I understand what you're saying. The only reason that the UV will get through that is because it's more of a lath wall than a fully enclosed exterior cladding, or am I missing something?
In my
here?
opinion, and Derek could probably trump it, is first you have the install of the fully adhesive membrane, right?
Right.
But, so that's time period where the sun is shining on us and the building. Sun doesn't care that we're there. It's going to do its job.
Agreed.
And then that cladding that they chose, beautiful cladding in the rendering, there's spots where the light comes through. So at different points of the year, the sun's going to be coming at different angles, and you wouldn't want a membrane behind that was not stable to fight off the power of the UV rays.
So if that was a lap siding, then it wouldn't be a concern anymore.
Not
I guess in terms of UV stability, ultimately when we talk about UV stability, it is, as you mentioned, Mark, primarily during exposure during construction. So it will be exposed entirely to the sun at that point. I guess when it gets into the cladding system, it depends on how open or closed that rain screen actually is.
There you go.
But I guess the exposure to light is, because the sun moves around, the light exposure is moving location all the time. It's not exposed to sunlight entirely for the full day, for example. So it really is at its highest risk during the construction phase.
And for all the crazy geeks out there, we know the sun doesn't move, but the angle of the sun moves based on the movement of the earth.
The earth is flat, Mark.
Yeah, it could be, right? One never knows.
So I guess just to show you then, where this can be applied, it does work on walls. It works on roofs, both sloped and flat roofs in certain installations. And we do have different types of external membrane. We have Exoperm Mono 150, 200, but like I said, today we're going to focus on the SA version, which is the self-adhered product. So it can be used in a number of different locations. Now, I guess just to get a little bit nerdy about it, and again, I'll try not to dwell too much on the really fine points, but like I said, this membrane has to do lots of different things. So it has to be UV stable. And, unfortunately, people don't emphasize that enough in specifications. The sun can do really, really major damage if a product is not UV stable. It also has to be waterproof. So this is W1 waterproof. It's entirely impermeable to water. But importantly, this layer has to be super breathable. And what I mean by breathable, I don't mean air. This is completely airtight, but it does allow vapor to move through it very, very easily. So I think there's a bit of a misconception in the construction industry. When people hear the word breathable, they think it refers to air. I guess that makes sense because we breathe air, but when we talk about a breathable building fabric, we're talking about vapor movement. So this membrane has sorry,
I'm
go on,
so
Mark.
happy you brought it up because it is confusing, right? People say, well, you're stopping water, you're stopping air. How can you allow vapor to go through? And then they might not even understand why you're letting vapor go through. Certainly they'll experience the health benefits, but they might not understand that trapping that vapor is going to cause huge problems for the dwelling unit and in hidden areas of the assembly, right? It's going to be
Exactly.
dangerous.
You've really just summarized, Mark, interstitial condensation, really concisely there. So that is exactly what interstitial condensation is. If moisture gets trapped in your building envelope, and it depends on what, the moisture can be coming from internal or external, depending on the climate. But if moisture gets trapped inside your walls, for example, it can start to condense and create, major issues from a mold perspective. It can actually cause condensation that can obviously rot the timber, for example, or negatively impact your U values and so on. So it's super important that moisture can escape from the building fabric by having an external breathable layer.
And
so
then
that's
the
really crucial.
self-adhered product itself, is this the application for those in the know and for those in the learning model that once it's applied, you roll it on and that's the activator for the bond?
Exactly. So the adhesive on the back of this membrane is pressure activated. So I'll show you a very short clip in just a second, but it is rolled on with a hard roller. That's how the membrane is stuck to, let's say, the OSB, for example. It can stick to several different substrates, but that starts a curing process, which takes 24 hours. So it's sticky when you touch it, but it gets even stickier for the first 24 hours after you apply pressure. And at that point, then you'll really struggle. You won't be able to pull it off an OSB board.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you'll basically rip the OSB apart.
Exactly. Or you'll rip your fingernails off trying. It's one or the other.
Right.
That's when you know you have a bond. So it's funny. We might be laughing at this, but there's a whole conversation out there in the installer world is we've been told to use a product, but how do we know if it works? And then that theory is you have scraps of OSB. Even if you're a perfect carpenter, you have scraps. So take some of the Exoperm when you get it, and before you even start the job, put some on, and the first day and the second day, try and peel it, and then put some on and don't roll it and try and peel it, and learn these products, why he's telling you that it's pressure activated, and then the conundrum of it's on there. How do I know? You learn.
Absolutely.
So let me ask this without jumping ahead. I'm only asking because it's on here. So this is going under the range screen cladding that we put on. Now, when you're penetrating through that, I'm assuming those nails, this is where you're saying it is self-sealing surface. So does that mean if I drive a nail through that it's going to seal around the nail and I'm not putting a true hole in it?
Exactly. So any fixing that goes through a membrane like this, that's a solid fixing, like a nail or a screw or something like that, is perfectly fine. So it self-seals. If it was a hollow fixing for any reason, if it was a hollow fixing, or if it was a ventilation duct or something like that, Of course, those would have to be sealed up. But as you can imagine, your battens are going to go on after the membrane. So the membrane goes on the OSB, then you apply your battens before your cladding system goes on, or your siding, or whatever approach you decide to go for. But those screws, nails, they're not a problem at all.
So, Dara, in the world of construction, this is craftsmanship. It's handwork. So if I'm putting on the furring strips and I realize that my furring strip is not, I didn't place it right. I made an error and I thought the stud was there. And so I popped it on, and then I feel, right, that my furring strip is off. And so I move my furring strip and I shoot it into the stud where I have one or two holes where I made the error. What do I do?
Yeah, so that'd basically be a case of where you would seal it up with an airtight tape. So the likes of a Connexo tape, which is our kind of, I guess, our most popular airtight tape. It's super common, that things like that do happen on site, and there's just no avoiding that. That's, I guess, the nature of construction. I think the important thing is educating the guys on site to understand why it's important to seal that up.
Right.
When it comes to air tightness, you've already bought the products. So getting from a good air tightness value to a really good air tightness value is purely workmanship. Now, on top of that, I guess, if you can imagine, this membrane is going to get wet from the outside. So rain is physically going to run down this membrane in the buildup you've seen previously. So if you have even small holes, that's an area where water can get into your building, and over time that can start to create damage. So I think it's really important to emphasize this is your main waterproofing system. So you really have to emphasize, I guess, quality of workmanship here.
That's it. You have the product for protection from rain. So follow the instructions, and that's the learnability, so that your workmanship, right, is not a callback. It's I could sleep, right? Because the next trade's coming behind me, and I know I protected the facade. I love the word workmanship. I'm glad it picked Dave's ears the same time it picked mine. So check it out, folks, and remember, you have the products. They're yours to use. They're yours to learn. Love that. Thank you. Thanks for dealing with our interruptions, Tara.
Yeah, I got one more interruption, Darren. I know. Then Mark and I are going to shut up and let you get through your slides.
No problem. I love it. It's much more fun to be interactive like this. So please.
My guess says you're going to talk about your tapes and all that as we move through. But just on what you said, Mark, and I put a banner up. Workmanship equals attention to details. Literally, this isn't hard stuff. It's just paying attention to the details. And when you have holes or you have something, you need to follow up behind it and seal it up, especially, if it's not your job and you did it, plumber cut something, missed the hole, whatever the case is. This type of stuff as an air barrier, it really comes down to attention to detail. And if you can pay attention to details, anybody can do this. It doesn't take a whole lot of knowledge or skill. It just takes understanding. Sorry.
Just to pick up on a point there, Dave. So I actually am not going to dwell on the tapes too much today, purely because this particular membrane, no, in fairness, as Mark brought up, anywhere there's a hole where you've missed a stud, for example, does have to be sealed with tape. But because this is a self-adhered product or a peel and stick, it's certified to stick to itself. So overlaps between one membrane and another on the OSB board don't have to be taped up separately. So it's really efficient in terms of time for installation, cost. You don't have to have rolls of tape on site for joining, overlaps. So it's the same rule applies for this membrane as others. So there's a 4-inch overlap required where one membrane overlaps another, but it actually sticks to itself. So you apply your pressure like we mentioned, but there's no need for a tape to actually seal up that connection.
So that 4-inch, that's a great guide, and it's easy to remember, right? 4-inch overlap saves you time, and there's a pattern on the exoperm too.
We try and make it as easy as we can.
Yeah, right.
Paint by numbers
is a guide. So line up your guide. It's a gear. Use the guide.
Yep.
Love it. Brilliant, by the way.
So I guess just in terms of, like I said, my own background would be quite technical. So from an install point of view, it does speed things up quite a bit. You're not hanging the membrane at the top and then putting in fixings as you move down. You're literally sticking down every inch. So it's quite a bit quicker. But I always like to look at things from a technical perspective. Just that's my background. I'm a passive house designer, and like I said, I do lots of woofy calculations. So when I model this membrane in woofy, it's completely flat. There's no air bubbles. There's no sagging, nothing like that. Because if there is, sagging behind the membrane, that's an area where water vapor could start to build up. We can start to get issues with that interstitial condensation we just learned about. So from a technical perspective, this membrane works really well because it's adhered entirely to the OSB. There's absolutely no gaps between the OSB and the membrane. And that's exactly how it will be modeled in woofy. So it's a more accurate reflection of what the woofy model is actually telling us works, if that makes sense.
It does.
So it's super handy in that sense. It also reduces the risk of tearing because, again, when membranes are sagging, they end up getting caught in all sorts of things and end up getting damaged on site. So it's a really, I guess, a solid install from a technical perspective as well.
If you're an athlete, think of your membrane as Lycra, right? You want to have it tight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Darren, I got a marketing thing for you. I was laughing to myself there because every time you say Woofy, I think of a Wookiee from Star Wars. So you need to have the name Woofy with Mark's beard hanging down, right?
Absolutely.
If you want to,
I'll get Uli as our marketing manager. I'll get her working on it straight away.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sounds good. Just to touch very quickly on the adhesives. Like I said, I'm not going to go into any detail on the tapes today, but we do have to make sure that the adhesive works really well. We're not actually mechanically fixing this stuff up. It's held with the adhesive itself. Now, of course, in most installations, especially in the American market, there's some sort of battens going on outside of that. But we need to make sure the adhesive is really high quality nonetheless. So it's a strong acrylic adhesive, and it's basically designed to last for a very, very long time. You can't see because I have a background on, but we have lots of machines in my office is kind of half office, half lab. So as you mentioned earlier on, Mark, if you have OSB or you have a plasterboard or a product that you want to know if our membrane can stick to it, we'll actually test it here. So we can age it first. So we can aggressively age the membranes in humidity chambers. Then we can stick it to whatever product that we want to test. So let's say OSB, for example, and then we can do a peel test to see how well it's sticking even after being aged. So we can do lots of that type of stuff here. Now, as well as that, we do lots of external testing. So this particular product the testing's just been finished by the Passive House Institute. I'm waiting for a formal report from Wolfgang, but he has told me the results are quite positive. So they test the membrane sticking to concrete, sticking to OSB, and sticking to itself. And then they do airtight tests to see, what sort of leakage is there in the entire system. So we're doing.
You piqued my interest there when you said concrete. So is that for when our wall assembly connects the OSB to the concrete?
Yeah. So there's no problem with sticking to concrete with this particular product, provided, I guess, there's a couple of things you need to watch out for. So we need it to be clean and dry, which can definitely be a challenge when it comes to concrete. And we also have to use Acroprime, which is the Partel spray-on primer. Porous materials like concrete are notoriously difficult to stick to, unfortunately. So we do recommend a primer when sticking to a porous material like that.
So when we're doing this, just so I can be perfectly clear on this, I can run your barrier down my walls, and then I can overlap my sill plate and secure it and airtight it to my foundation so long as it's properly cleaned and we use your prep spray or what have you, so you get that strong adhesive. And you're telling me that that's sticky enough because concrete's rough. It's going to mold itself in all them tiny little pores to make that air barrier happen?
Yeah, so it depends. To be honest, if it's really rough, a really roughly finished concrete, we'd probably recommend we have Acrobond, which is a caulk that we would apply to. It basically helps get into all those nooks and crannies,
right?
All those little pores, I guess, in the concrete. So I guess it depends on the quality of the concrete that you're sticking to.
And that evaluation is common, right? We're used to good parts of concrete, bad parts of concrete. And I think everyone knows when you deal with concrete, there's a sealer first. So it's from the same brand. you follow the same procedure, and if you have questions, you ask.
Exactly. And just in terms of the actual installation, we get asked this quite a bit. It doesn't take long for your primer to dry. So it's not like you're having to apply that and wait 24 hours. You know, it's dry very quickly. So it doesn't slow down the process a whole lot. In fact, it saves you time. I can't tell you the amount of times we've been called to site to assess a project. It's not sticking to the concrete. It's not sticking to the concrete, but they haven't used the correct primer. So it really will save you time. You know, take my word for it, you're going to need a primer for concrete.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't understand primers, ask your plumber. He doesn't show up at a job without a primer, right?
Absolutely.
You have the pipes, use the primer. End of story.
Or a painter. Let's move on.
All right.
Yeah. So in terms of I guess products that work quite well with the Exoperm Mono SA. So if you can, I guess, picture the scene, we have this applied to our OSB on the outside of the building. We have, let's say, some penetrations for ductwork, for sewage, for lots of different, I guess, penetrations like that. Now, like I said, fixings are self-sealing, but any sort of a duct or a pipe would have to be sealed up. So my go-to approach would be, I guess there's a number of different approaches, but I'd start with the cab seal, which is a grommet. So basically, this little hole in the middle of the grommet stretches out to go around your ventilation duct, for example. We have lots of different sizes, and you can basically see on our website the range of sizes that each grommet can facilitate. But then this little white backing paper is removed, and it sticks directly onto the Exoperm Mono. So you've created a really airtight seal in 10 seconds, probably less. It's pretty much foolproof. So that's a really solid solution. We also have the Conlex butyl, which is a butyl tape. And again, that can be used for larger penetrations like ductwork. It's applied in one piece. So I'm sure your listeners are probably used to seeing a flexible tape like Connexo, you know, being cut into smaller strips and adhered to around the external of a pipe.
You get really good at working as scissors when you use this.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the problem with the scissors is I worked in training for many years and went through many sets of scissors. The glue tends to seize the scissors up after a couple of months of use.
That's because the glue works.
Yeah, well, I guess it's doing its job, really, isn't it? So our scissor budget was extraordinarily high for the few years that I was in full-time training. And then the other products, I guess, are the Aquaprime spray, as I mentioned, for concrete. Verbond will be used, like I think it was yourself, Dave, asked me about applying to a rough concrete. Verbond will be really good just to ensure that you're getting into all those pores in the concrete. So if it's quite a rough surface, we'd recommend using Verbond.
Got it. Right.
And these are all pre-tested for compatibility. So that's why we just saw that together.
Exactly. And actually, just to touch on that, it helps with warranties and everything. So we know they stick to each other, and therefore we stand over the products for longer. You know, if you were to use a different type of tape or a different primer or something, we just don't know how well they work together. And the warranties then become problematic. Correct. So I guess we stand over an entire system for much longer than we would if you're kind of creating a Frankenstein type of approach where you're taking products from all over the place, you know?
Yeah. And I love this cab seal.
Solution, follow the solution. This is
well, and on top of that, Mark, you know, that cab seal really takes the guesswork out of how to tape up a pipe when it comes out of a wall properly, right? I mean, if you really think about it, you know, with labor shortages and what we have, I mean, that's kind of a put it over the pipe, it seals itself, and then it seals itself to the Exoperm, and you're covered by warranty because you're using a system that was created. And I you know, this whole idea that actually, let me take a step back. More companies should look at productization of their process and the system of their process so it works the whole way through, I guess is what I'm trying to say. This is
absolutely great. And just on that point, Dave, I guess, you know, I mentioned earlier on that, you know, once you've bought the products, it's all down to workmanship. You know, you can't buy a really good air tightness result. You have to actually install it. But this actually makes that process much easier. It removes the workmanship to a certain extent. So we're kind of doing as much as we can to help you along that process to achieving a super, you know, airtight result.
Yeah, you know, at the beginning of a project, when you're dealing with high performance, that you're counting the penetrations. So your plumber, your mechanical, your electrician, you know where they're going to have pipe, right? And so when you're ordering up your membranes, this is just a friendly tip, y'all. When you're ordering up the membranes, take into account and then get the cab seals and get 2 or 3 extra, because Harry, Mary, and Sally and Scott,
Bob.
right? So just go get them. Go get them. Go get them.
And ask us for help too. Like I said, we have a huge range of sizes. So we have anything from a tiny cable up to a huge ventilation duct. We kind of have cab seals that suit any of those. But you'll see it's a really easy guide on our website. So it's super easy to follow.
Awesome.
I'm just going to touch on one project for today. Again, I know we're sort of stuck for time a little bit. I'd love to stay and chat all day, but I guess we probably don't have time for that. So this is quite a large project in Arizona, where the Exoper mono is being used on the outside of the building. Installed upside down, unfortunately, but that's more of a marketing thing. It doesn't affect the performance, provided you can read the branding. So that's a super important tip. If you can't read the branding, your product is inside out. So just be careful of that one. But basically, I'll just show you a quick video while I talk through the project. The owner is Mark Wille. I think you guys know him. He'd be the founder.
Oh, yeah. This is the Arizona project.
Yeah, so this is that project.
Very
I knew
cool.
you guys would know Mark. So it's basically a large project. It's ICF, insulated concrete form. So basically there's 2 layers of insulation with a concrete poured in between the two, for anyone that's not familiar with the system. Now, in that particular type of system, your concrete actually acts as your airtight barrier for the majority of the house. So really what the membrane here is doing is acting as your weather defense system. So like we mentioned, keeping the rain and the wind out of your building, but also making sure that the building can breathe if necessary. So again, super vapor open with perms of 13. So like I said, really, really vapor open. But I guess why the product was suitable for this particular project, obviously the UV exposure was a big deal here. You can see the size of the project, and the membranes were exposed for quite a period of time. So we can leave them fully exposed like that for up to 4 months with no damage, which is super, super important in this particular project.
Yep.
And in terms of installation, then the temperatures we can install these products at are very important as well, because there is adhesive involved here, remember? So I guess if you could picture, a piece of chewing gum in the sun out in Arizona, it doesn't perform, it's a really messy sort of stuff. So we need adhesives that work really well in a wide temperature range. So this particular product can be applied from -15 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to about 180 degrees Fahrenheit, which, as you can imagine, was super, super important on this particular project.
Shut the front door, really?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Super wide range in terms of temperatures. We provide these products in lots and lots of different countries around Europe, the US, the UK. I was talking to Mark before we joined the call here. I was just in Scotland last week. So you're dealing with lots and lots of different climates. So it's important to have that wide range of temperatures where installation is possible.
Yeah.
And that's, I guess, why...
Sorry, does that... I got to ask Mark, for all of our viewers, does that hit all of the climate zones in the US, Mark? Well,
it doesn't hit climate zone 8, right? But no one wants to build in climate zone 8 anyway. So, at the same accord, like, you're giving the range, and the range is incredible. And
I guess we're trying to cover as much as we possibly can.
Understood.
That's ultimately the aim there, and to be honest, those ranges are within a safe tolerance. So you could push it one way or the other, but we just want to make sure we can stand over the install. We don't want to overstretch ourselves in terms of those temperature ranges. So Perfect. I guess it's just one example of a project. We have lots of different projects going on in the US, but that's one that used the self-adhered product, which I thought might.
And if Brad from AFT is out there, he owes David Jennifer a coffee cup for that great footage of the Arizona site.
Absolutely.
And he owes one to Dara as well.
Just in terms of installation, and again, I'll breeze through this very quickly. This is my colleague Shane here. We do lots of work on site, which I know is probably more common in the US. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I understand the offsite industry is let's say it's relatively new there. So we do both. We have I suppose on-site installation. You can see Shane removing the clear backing paper off the back of the membrane there.
Yeah.
and just using a hard roller then to apply that pressure, which activates the curing process.
I know we're pressed
Again,
for time, but this is important. So when you have modules and they have the exoperm on there in the factory, then when they come together and get stitched, or whatever term you use, then you would put that strip and do the 4-inch overlap, and now you have an
exactly.
airtight and go crazy with your cladding.
Yeah, so it's something that we do quite a lot. I have a video here of Shane installing on basically it's a wall as well, but in factories they tend to do it on the flat, which really simplifies the installation. But you're exactly right, Mark. So what we would typically do, and it's one of the main parts, I guess, of my job in Ireland and the UK, but Hugh would cover lots of this in the US as well. For off-site manufacturers, we will actually look at your details. We'll talk about how assembly goes on site, and we'll actually talk you through that overlapping process. So we have lots of different products and solutions, both for timber frame and metal frame, panels or modules. We kind of have experience in lots of different off-site,
Wonderful.
I guess, installation methods. So different people go for different installations, but they do tend to go for the approach you mentioned earlier on, where you overlap one panel or pod with another by using that 4-inch overlap.
I will add, Dave is heading over to the UK, so maybe you guys can meet together and.
Oh, absolutely, Dave. I'm over in the UK quite a lot, so I'd be more than happy. What part are you going to?
Yeah, we're going to London the week of June 18th. We'll be there for a solid week. So we're doing a presentation over there, and then we're visiting a lot of factories and some sites. So it's going to be great.
I'm going to write that down. I will meet you in London, and I'll give you some recommendations on where to eat. I have a good friend lives in Camden, so every time I go to London, he gives me a list of places to eat. So I'll be sure to share that with you.
I heard the best food is in Cambridge. Is that right?
Cambridge is a little bit far out, but to be honest, you get really, really amazing stuff in London or really any of the major cities. They've really upped their game in terms of food.
I want to touch on something real quick about your product, Darren. Then we can talk to food. We can talk to food in a little bit.
Sounds good.
I haven't had lunch yet, and I'm getting hungry. My day started at 3 a.m.
Dave's angry.
Yeah. No, but this can be used as the roof membrane air barrier as well as the sidewall air barrier. It's not two separate items. That means your purchasing time, what you need to have on site. We're talking about one product. We don't do, for the air barrier, do you still need to use ice and shield and all this other stuff?
Yeah, so basically in terms of continuity between walls and roofs, this system can be used fine on, let's say, for example, a sloped roof. It's perfectly fine there as your main system. With flat roofs, it is important to note that there does have to be something to protect from the UV. It can't be basically left exposed for years and years and years, because unfortunately there's no avoiding the damage of the sun. It is UV stable for a very long time, but over time that will start to take its toll. So it has to be covered with something else. In a flat roof installation, it would always be covered in a sloped roof anyway. So that's not a problem. In terms of what this product actually, what role this, so it's completely breathable. It keeps out the rain and the wind and so on, but it can be used as a vapor control layer as well. It's completely airtight, so it can be your airtight system. But that's where woofy becomes very important. So I would always do a model in woofy to make sure that using one singular layer is safe in your particular buildup. It's perfectly fine in lots of buildups, but in others we wouldn't recommend it. So we'll give you honest, I guess, open advice, and we'll give you all the graphs and the technical data to back up what we're saying on that.
That's really great. That's really great.
Yeah, it is. And I'm telling you, you got to use Mark as your woofy for your
absolutely.
Mark.
Yeah,
it just makes sense. Mark, you don't have to thank me. Just do it. I could see woofy stuffed animals and bobbleheads everywhere. So let's all right. We're gonna hit a couple questions. We're gonna speed round through the questions. Everybody else out there, we really appreciate you tuning in. And if we missed you on the comment side, we'll get you next time. So Wade Atterbury asks, are any of your tapes made from green products yet?
So that's a really interesting question. So basically the tapes, to get the adhesion that we need, it's basically a trade-off. So we're trying to reduce our embodied carbon as much as we can. I have a couple of bullet points here I was going to run through, and that was one thing I wanted to mention as a kind of an exciting point to watch out for the Partel product range. So we've just finalized our environmental product declarations for our entire range. So what that means is we've taken all the materials that go into the product, we've reduced their embodied carbon as much as we can, and we have an independent document to tell you the embodied footprint of each of our products. I done a thesis many years ago on life cycle assessment, so it's something that I'm really passionate about, and we want to, I guess, put our money where our mouth is and show exactly the impact that our products have on the overall efficiency in terms of how green the materials are.
So EPDs and LCAs are the acronyms that when you email Dara and the team, you say, I need to know more, and they already have it ready. They're
Absolutely.
steps ahead.
When I done my thesis on life cycle assessment, it was about 5 years ago, and there was no such thing as EPDs. They existed, but nobody had them. It was super frustrating. You were guessing at quantities, you were guessing at materials, and a life cycle assessment is only as accurate as the information you put in. So we wanted to be transparent about that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like a vegetarian showing up to a steak joint. They're like, what do I eat? Right? They're like, it's coming.
Yeah. Get over in that line. Michael Bruce asks, is this competition with the Zip system? I would say it is, right?
You guys might be more familiar. I'm not familiar with the Zip system myself.
So Zip system, Michael, the Zip system is an OSB with a built-in air barrier, vapor control, WRB. So it is permeable WRB, and then they have a tape that handles the joint. But that's also your OSB. So the difference is the product that you're seeing from Partel is whether you have an OSB or you have a plywood, then there's the membrane for your assembly need, versus the Zip is inclusive of the OSB itself at 7/16 or 5/8.
Yeah. So
Imperial.
All right. Michael Bruce had two more questions. I'm going to just combine them together. Let's answer them, and then we're going to wrap it up right there. Can exoperm be used in marine environments like boathouses? He also asked, can they also be used between cement board and tile in a shower or tub?
It's an interesting question. So basically, it's I hate to say it depends, but it does depend. It can be installed in damp conditions, but not wet conditions.
Right.
So I guess it's a sort of assess it situation by situation. So I'd need to know a little bit more about climates and so on. And I'm happy to engage with that particular listener. There's no problem with that. But yeah, I guess it depends.
Yeah. Well, to me, it sounds like you should stick with the system for what it's been tried and tested for. Like that, you'd be kind of going out on your own if you went and did it, just because you haven't put a lot of testing in behind it, right?
Tile companies work with the bonding of porcelains and thin sets and etc. This is for large format wall and roof assemblies.
Exactly.
And testing backs it.
I guess even with the tiles, it's kind of like what I was saying earlier on about system warranties and so on. We try and keep our stuff to what it's designed to do, and then I guess the tile installers likely wouldn't stand over something that's stuck to a product that they're not familiar with. So
right, for sure. All right, here's a comment that we got to put up from our good friend Mr. Greg Ugaldi. He said, "Great job, gents. Don't forget Innovative Housing Showcase, the HUD on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., June 11th and 12th. That is next week. Isn't that next week? Yeah, that is next week. You may find me there. Who knows? We're all over the place these days. So there's a lot of really great stuff going on right outside the White House's front door. Let's showcase your products. Be up there. Make sure you go check it out. I appreciate you putting that in the comments, Greg. We appreciate every time you tune in. And if you do not know Dara, now you do, Greg. So we appreciate you very much. Gentlemen, we got to wrap it up. What an awesome show. What an awesome show, Dara. I mean, yeah, listen, you did an amazing job for the amount of time you had to put into this. You clearly know your stuff.
I try. So I really appreciate the time. Thanks very much for having me. And if anybody wants to follow up with anything, please do feel free to connect by whatever means. Same as you guys, we're on all the social media platforms. If you reach out, you'll get a hold of one of us. Uli is our market manager. She runs all of those, and she can pass your inquiry along to the appropriate person here in Partel.
Give us your website real quick.
So it's www.partel.com. And you'll get Partel on LinkedIn as well. It's just Partel.
Yeah, or
Partel.com.
YouTube, Instagram, they're all the same.
Yeah.
Dara, we look forward to having you back. You have lots more solutions to offer, and
Sounds good. Maybe we could focus on Woofy. It seems like it's an interesting topic. Maybe we can look at that specifically next time or something. Try and get some of the technical guys. Try and please everybody from that perspective.
And and I want to give a shout out to all the people from your network, the Partel network that joined. Next week we have Larry Clay. He was just the president of the Canadian Home Builders Association, so they're used to vapor and warm cold climates. He'll be joining us on the 10th. I wish everyone that's having the holiday weekend back by you to enjoy the holiday weekend with the friends and family, and make sure you connect to Dara and tell Hugh you'll see him next time.
Thanks very much, guys.
Hey, appreciate you, Dara. Thank you, Mark. All right, listen, everybody, that's a wrap for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you go to Partel.com, check them out, try their products. Why not? What do you have to lose other than air if you don't? So that was pretty good. You got to admit, Mark, right? Other than, yeah.
I got
it. Anyhow, we love to have fun in this show. Again, make sure you go and hit that like button, and please share this video as many times as you can, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We really would appreciate having you guys follow us. Mark, Dara, you guys have a great day. Everybody
Thanks, guys.
else,
have a nice day.
Happy Friday. It's beer time for Dara. Dara, go get your beer. Say that 5 times. Dara, go get your beer. Bye now.
See ya.